Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Culture Climate Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Brentz, and today we'll be bringing you two inspirational guests, Kevin Kirkwood and Hayden Lindley from Invictus Roofing. In this conversation, we'll discover how they've embraced accountability, integrity, and innovation to create a culture where winning isn't just about the scoreboard. It's about winning in every aspect of life. Kevin and Hayden will share how they arrived at their company's name, Invictus, and how its Latin roots reflect the mindset and the ethos of their team. Join us as we explore the essence of their leadership styles, the power of fostering personal fulfillment, and the journey towards creating a dynamic and cohesive team culture in this engaging discussion. All right, let's climb it. Welcome to Culture Climate, presented by STC. Company culture is complex, like trying to track down Sasquatch. But we're here to dive into the belly of the beast. Join us for firsthand stories from leaders, along with transformative ideas and insights impacting organizations and people. Ready to climb it? Let the journey begin. Well, welcome back to the Culture Climate Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Brentz, and I'm here with Daniel James from STC. And we got two awesome guests with us today. We got Kevin Kirkwood and Hayden Lindley with Invictus Roofing. So welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, we're here on the Culture Climate Podcast. What we're trying to do is find sightings of this mythical creature that we call culture and company culture specifically. We're trying to find ways that companies have improved their culture, have grown their culture, some pitfalls. But as you see here, our buddy Sasquatch ascending the mountain. You know, you have tough trials. You go up and down, peaks and valleys of the mountain that is trying to grow your company through company culture. Yeah. So when we reached out to you to talk about this topic, like what really sparked your interest of coming on the show?
You go for it.
Yeah, I mean, culture, for one. Obviously, we're partners with STC, and so anything that they were, wanting to us to be involved with, we wanted to support it. But I thought the topic of culture was really what sparked my interest, just because it touches everything. There's culture everywhere. So
absolutely.
I think the topic itself is very broad, and it doesn't only just fit into, I think, businesses or companies, but all types of organizations. Even families have cultures.
Yes.
Yeah.
They definitely do. What do you think, Hayden?
It's one of those that if you don't realize it, every company has a culture, good, bad, ugly. So it's just being able for us to, talk with you all about culture and be intentional about culture. Thought it'd be great to sit down and just have that discussion.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your backgrounds, anything with being a part of organizations, teams, sports, whatever it was. Like, how has your backgrounds really shaped your idea of culture and where you are right now at Invictus Roofing?
I grew up playing baseball, played baseball through college. So, I've always been in that team environment. So, just like different companies, different teams have different cultures. So what playing sports kind of taught me, being in business is, different positions have different duties. So, it's just being able to rely on those people out there on that field, in that office with you to do their job, because you can do your job, but if they don't do their job, the ball gets dropped. So having that culture and that accountability is just holding everybody together. And I think accountability also goes along with culture.
Yeah.
Talk about accountability. I like that topic. That's come up a few times on our show. What is your unique way as leaders to set an environment where accountability is kind of the norm?
Just with all of our team members, is there needs to be a mission. There needs to be clearly drawn out expectations for each person. And if those expectations aren't set on the front end and agreed upon, then there's no way you can hold anybody accountable. So having that clear path, that clear, list of duties, and then, just check in to make sure those duties are getting done. And at the end of the day, it's, they're either doing it or they're not doing it. And I think when bad culture starts to set in is people not holding other people accountable.
Yeah, accountability is actually one of our core values. And accountability means different things to different people or different individuals. I think for us specifically, like Hayden talks about the team environment. If, for example, if everyone is needing to pull a rope across a certain line, if one person isn't pulling their their section, they're not, it affects the entire team. And so therefore it's important to hold that person accountable. And it works both ways. I'm accountable to the team to make sure that I'm leading in the right direction, you know? And so I think accountability, it's not so much about, I gotcha. I read something the other day that said, winners and people that excel, successful people, whichever box you want to put it in, they look for accountability. The average person waits for it. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a different breed of human being that looks for the accountability. Then the rest, they wait for it. So we have a culture within Invictus where we look for accountability. We invite that because it just makes us better. So it's a frame. I think accountability has kind of it's a double-edged term where it's kind of like, you know, the I got you moment, you know, where you're put on display for doing something wrong. Being held accountable means different for us. Hold accountable is, are you bringing as much value as you can within your specific position every single day? You know, hold you accountable to that. I mean, the other thing is you look to the guy to the left, to the right. If they are seeking accountability, then automatically you'll start seeking it as well. But there's a difference. People that wait for accountability to find them, and then people that are actually seeking it out.
I love that. I mean, I really resonate with that, just because what you're talking about with sports, and like not only everybody has a unique position and what that position is, but also is dependent upon the situation within the game, right? And so certain situations in business as well, whether you're working out of town, you're in town, you've got a challenging project, steep slope, low slope, commercial, residential, not only are you a key player and you have a position to play, but then also depending on the situation within the game, if you will, that situation may change. You have to be flexible. So accountability is often seen as a negative connotation.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of times, to your point, Kevin, if they're go-getters or winners or whatever box, successful people, they're looking to take on that accountability to be better. So I love that. I mean, that's well said. So what are some other core values besides accountability that are part of the Invictus umbrella?
Integrity.
Okay.
Innovation.
Okay.
Innovation, transparency, and integrity. Those are the five.
Love that.
You know, for us, integrity is just do the right thing all the time, every time. That's really what it comes down to it. And then, you know, excellence is a core value of ours. And just doing, you know, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even down to when we have new members come on, they start looking around and going, these guys push their chairs in. Pushing the chair in is not going to be an issue when it, you know, with on the bottom line. But it's a mentality thing. Yeah. All of a sudden, they're all taking the trash out. And it really started with our kids. Is if you do something halfway, then we talked about kind of a mindset and a trigger. Then your mind is triggered to do things halfway. But if you do everything you do, from pushing your chair in to the way you write an email to the way you are approaching a client, every little thing, if you do it with excellence, it's unnatural to do things, you know, half-assed.
Yeah. That sounds a lot like winning, you know, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording here about this idea and concept of winning, which I think similar to culture, like, what does that mean? Like on the scoreboard, we know like who wins based off the higher score,
right?
But can y'all tell me a little bit more about your idea of winning?
Sure. You know, it was interesting. A while back, I overheard Hayden say, someone asked him very directly, what's the culture at Invictus? And he just immediately said put the guy back a bit, because most people are like, well, a culture is really based around in this ecosystem of, you know, this whole paragraph. And it was like, it's one word, winning. And it's true. And to your point, for us, winning is not necessarily about amount of sales is brought in per quarter or margins met or, you know, having zero, OSHA issues and all those things. Winning it's on all aspects. Mindset, you know. And then it's like, it kind of goes back to the definition of what winning is for you might be different than me, Hayden, you know, Daniel, but winning on all aspects of your life. And that's one thing. It takes effort, you know, to communicate with a team. But if you're not winning physically, you know, in your health, then nothing else necessarily matters. If you're not winning at home, if you're not leading at home, then you can't lead at work. If if you're not winning within your relationships with your children, your spouse, your significant other, whatever the case is, then you're not winning. I know a lot of guys that have just tons and tons of money. I know some really, really wealthy guys that I would not consider them winners because everything else is a disarray, so winning is winning in all aspects of your life. And I think if we found that if we can offer assistance or help or show examples of what that looks like, especially to the younger guys that come to the company, then they start to go, oh, this is normal. Winning is normal. Taking care of your body is normal. Taking care of your mind is normal. Finding how you can bring value to somebody else more than they bring value to you daily, that's normal. Yeah. And then once you normalize winning, it's not just about what's on the scoreboard. Yeah. We've had our asses kicked, on certain quarters, but we came out of it going, we won. We won. Here's why: because we grew so much from it. We didn't fall apart. We leaned and we pressed in. So the lessons learned from that, we'll put that in the win column.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that really resonates with me because, you probably heard about people having like a word of the year. And this year, my word is integration. Like being integrated, and that's really what you're talking about is like winning in all aspects of my life. And I'm imperfect at that, but like, that's what I'm striving for. I always talk about it here at STC that I want to be the same person here that I am with my family and like bring that same type of energy and attitude and mentality to it. I think that's what you're talking to.
That's exactly right.
But we know we're still going to have issues. We're still going to have challenges. Absolutely. We're still going to have losses. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about it a little bit, Kevin, but can y'all, as a young company, can you talk about any specific challenges that you've had to overcome? And so you had this winning mentality, but how did you respond in the face of adversity?
I mean, I think just like any small business or growing business, no matter if it's in the construction space or produce or tech, I think you have a lot of challenges. And the interesting thing is the more successful your business becomes, the challenges are still there. They're just actually bigger. I think for us was the challenge of training our team and putting the resources, not only financially, but just the energy into training them. And then for them to leave, someone might offer them, an additional $5 more an hour, or they may not like being held accountable, whatever the case is. And Hayden and I have this discussion a lot. It's like, well, on the balance sheet, how do you justify spending that amount of time and energy and focus and, money into training? But then again, we also think, how can we afford not to? Yeah. So I think that was a lot of the winning, is like how we came through it. The biggest win for us through hard times, and we've gone through some hard times, was how we dealt with it. And we pulled together as a team, and we leaned into it. And when I say we leaned into it, we crawled into the belly of the problem, sliced it open, and came out with guts and all. And it just, so now when an issue rises, we don't flinch like we used to.
Run to it.
Now we run to it. And almost it's kind of like, good, now it's time to grow.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt. This is going to suck. But we recognize what's on the other side of it. And it's not just Hayden getting up and going, okay, guys, we're going to do it. We literally come in together and go, yeah, this is a problem. Even if it's like operations, no problem at all. But finance is dealing with something over here. Everyone comes together and go, okay, what's the challenge? And we don't have problems anymore. We say they're challenges, and we just lean into them. The biggest misconception I think a lot of business leaders have is they try their hardest to eliminate problems. And they're almost like, okay, everything's clean. All the gremlins have been killed. And they almost hide in a closet. Like, I don't want to see any problems, as opposed to, no, that lets you know that you're doing something right.
Yeah.
If you're not getting pushback from growth or from surging, then you're probably doing something, you're probably not in fifth gear like you need to be. So accept the fact that there are problems there and lean into them and embrace them as quickly as possible and do it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I remember watching a little stint on Jocko from the Navy SEALs, and he was talking about that. Like, if there's a problem, he would be like, "Good,"
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
in his book,
that.
Extreme Ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they talk about when they were in the desert. It's like, we have this going on. Their response is good.
Yeah. And so they came. probably initially were more nervous to bring it up or like, hesitant. And then he embraced it as the leader,
it's going to happen.
which changed the mentality and the environment that they were operating in.
Yeah.
So now they look at it as like, good, like, let's go,
Let's learn from it, move on.
To your point, it changed the culture of that, of that unit,
of
that team.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so kind of speaking on that lens, like culture, how do you think culture affects like the employees, like both the individual employee and the collective unit? So like, we'll start with like the employee. Like, what do you want an employee that's coming into Invictus Roofing? How do you want them to feel after being with Invictus for a while?
Welcomed, heard, and part of the team.
Yeah.
I think if we can nail those three things, then they feel part of the unit. And, like Kevin said, we'll go into that battle together.
Yeah.
And it's one of those of, like you were saying, we had a new sales guy come in a couple weeks ago and wasn't pushing his chair in, wasn't doing these things. And then about a week in the office, he's pushing his chair in. One day I'm sitting at my desk working. He walks in and says, "Hey, can I get your trash and take it out for you?" He's been there for a week.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like he gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it. So, just having that culture where they can feel part of this team and they know that if there is an issue, we're going to jump in that issue with them.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Kevin, you got anything to that?
That's pretty much it. I mean, it's when you're on board, and we've done a better job, and we're not great at this, and there's a lot of areas to improve on how we qualify. So when we bring you on, we no longer are considering just, do you have the ability to do that role? If we're hiring for a project manager or a superintendent or a roof advisor or whatever the case is, it's, are you going to not only fit within our culture, but are you going to help grow and magnify our culture? Because there's agents of change that happen in every business. Sure, with STC, the culture is, and you can just tell you guys have a phenomenal culture. It's in the walls. You can feel it when you come here. But I'm sure it's not the same culture when you guys first started as it is now. And so we look for people that are going to be agents of change that are going to help augment and increase our culture. So to Hayden's point is, we don't do a lot of hazing like a lot of companies do, especially in the construction industry. That's counter. I know the reason why they want to do it. They want to have them earn that seat. But the bottom line is we screen to the point where we also hire off of the person's personality, how they're wired.
Yeah.
I'm a hard worker. I have strong work ethic. It's going to be hard to find someone that will outwork me. They're out there, but they're hard to find. But if you put me in an administrative role, I would be fired within probably 4 or 5 days, because that's just not how I'm wired. So if you're in the Invictus camp, or you're on the Invictus team, we have made it a point to put you in the right position. Like Hayden talks about a team, they're all great athletes, but if you have a running back running as a wide receiver, it's probably not going to be as effective, or vice versa. So at that point, we want to make sure that they do feel welcome. They are a part of the team, and they understand it very quickly. The culture doesn't come from Hayden or I. The culture comes from the fabric of the team. Like we talked about Navy SEALs. One of my former coaches was a Navy SEAL. He talks about during Hell Week and during BUDS, when they're going through that, the Master Chief isn't necessarily doing a lot of course correction at that point in time. He's not calling people out that's not doing it. The team itself, that boat crew, they will police themselves, because there is such an extreme level of accountability within those teams. And so we've noticed that as well. Is Hayden come at the guy and go, "Hey man, you need to push your chair in and everything else." It's not about the chair being pushed in. It's not going to cause the world to crumble. It's the mindset of it. What happens is the other teammates, they're watching him. They're like, "Oh, he's watching these guys. Okay, this is a big deal." So that's having a very, very specific culture. And I think the more specific the culture is, the more aware everyone is of like, "Oh, this individual, nothing's wrong with them as a person, but they are not fitting in our culture." Not because they're not, they can do the job, but they might not fit into this culture because your culture is so specific that they stand out very quickly.
Yeah, you talked about, when we were talking before we recorded, when you're evaluating someone to come in, it's more like about the intangibles. But have you guys used any tools or resources just to kind of evaluate either personnel or just the overall culture of your company before?
Yeah, we have we use Culture Index.
Okay.
Started using that a couple months ago, And it's really eye-opening whenever you have people run through these, and it's just words. I think there's like 174 words that pop up on a computer screen. People click the number of words that, relate to them, and it kicks us out a graph on the back end of, self-autonomy, how they are with other people, their attention to detail. So what we can do is we can build a model of the ideal graph of a person that we want to fit in this specific role. Then we can send out a link to as many candidates as we want to. They take that and it filters everything through and says, this person, their personality matches this exact graph that you want for this position. So, someone in a sales position, you're going to want someone that's, high autonomy, that's going to get out there and get it. You want someone that's really personable, that's going to get out there and meet the people, where not necessarily, like a project manager. So the different attributes that we have in the system, we can customize those to the positions we want. And it's been a game changer. Once you figure out how to read that graph, it's really eye-opening. We went through a training and we printed off every single person in the company, went through it all. And it's like, that makes sense.
Wow.
That's why that person's good doing this, and it connects a lot of dots. It's about 80%, 90% accurate, but it really is a good roadmap just to get that conversation started.
That's great. And we want to highlight that too, because a lot of this, like we talked about, culture is a very moving target, or it can be depending on who you're talking to. So it's a lot of it is like a feel thing, right? Yeah. It's like, how do we feel, which is important to diagnose or learn about from your own employees, but to have specific tools and resources that you can leverage to measure or monitor how people are feeling. Yeah. That's an extremely useful tool. And it allows for intentional conversations or how you show up or respond to certain employees. Like I believe, Kevin, you were talking about earlier about just understanding other people, being aware of your employees and adapting, you as a leader or like a coach, if you will, knowing how to respond to a certain employee. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. When we rolled the culture index out at first, I was like, okay, this is just another, personality exam. I'm not sure how much bearing, like how beneficial can this information be? But once we really dug into it and we started applying it, it was very helpful. And it kind of, so I have 3 children. I have a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And I have to parent them very different. They have the same DNA, same ecosystem, same home. They're so very different. And so the way I communicate with my 14-year-old daughter is very different than how I communicate with my 10-year-old son. And the same, so not everyone, the whole adage is like, treat other people how you want to be treated. I really think it's treat people how they need to be treated or want to be treated. So perfect example is, I'm not necessarily, my natural gift is not to give attaboys or affirmations out. And I learned that a lot of people, because that's not necessarily important to me, but that's important to other people. Also, we've learned that there's certain personality types that get energy and charge from a 2-minute conversation about, hey, how was your weekend? Me personally, I don't want to talk about my weekend. There's a really good chance I worked. And it's a day that starts and ends in Y a lot of times, but that's how I grind. That's not necessarily how they are. Same token, we have employees that it zaps their energy to have small talk. We have certain teammates that it charges their energy to have a 2-minute bit of phone conversation. To Hayden's point, the culture index gives you a snapshot into how they are hardwired and how they respond. You mentioned coaching. It's the job of the coach is just to get the absolute best out of that player. So we change our mindset is we're not trying to force this individual into this role that we need you to do. We're trying to find out what are they naturally gifted and wired for. We had someone that was in more of a clerical, operational type role. When all of the testing, all of the feedback we got is, man, they are a people person. They are charged. They interact with people. They are basically the poster child of what a business development or a high-end account manager would be. They're outside cats. We had them inside, and realized it wasn't this person wasn't talented. It wasn't that this person didn't have the work ethic, share the core values is we were putting them in a situation where they don't get energy from that. Again, like we go back to, you put me in some admin task, I'll get it done for you, but I'm going to come home feeling like I just got hit by a baseball bat, just drained. But then you have our finance team, you throw some spreadsheets and some metrics in front of them, and it charges them. The last thing is, this was really eye-opening for me. I can walk into Hayden's office and go, hey man, I got this idea. We're going to do bam, bam, bam. And Hayden gets charged up. He's like, and we could also do this and this and this. And we come up and we literally will come up with, what we apply in our business. Like how we have grown so much has been a lot of the things that him and I have just come up with in about a 10-minute, just blast session. Go to another individual's, space down, have the same conversation. And I'm wondering, why isn't he excited? Why isn't he charged up? In fact, this individual is recoiled. It's like, because they don't process that way. They need information. They need data.
Processes,
checklists. Checklists. Hayden and I can jam off of that, off the vision, and that sparks, and then all of a sudden he starts backfilling the operational pieces and how we're going to take that hill without blowing ourselves up. And I never understood, why isn't everyone just completely just like, let's take the mountain this afternoon, like I am. It's not that they're not committed to the company. It's not that they're not committed to the growth. It's just that doesn't energize them.
Yeah.
It actually stresses them out and takes energy from them, because like, oh my God, Kirkwood just decided that we're going to go put a roof on Mars, next month.
We just need a spaceship and we can go.
Yeah.
Call Elon.
Good. Let's go.
It's good. And so now it's like, but we've realized but you get the data. Okay. So here's what the market research has said from here and here. We're going to process it this way. Then we're going to do this and this. And you kind of start laying out what that brick road looks to get there. And then they're like, okay, now on board. All that information all that tactic comes from just understanding what makes that individual tick. And I think that's a huge part of any company's culture, is figuring out what gets that person on a level where they feel that they're fulfilled.
Yeah.
What energizes them, right?
What energizes them.
That's what Ryan's big on, is like, he's like, I want to be the same person at home as I am at work.
Yeah.
But I also want to go to work energized about my role. And I think what you were talking about really taps into what you were saying about being energized by the role. And like, it's so much more. Like, you guys seem like visionaries, right? And like you're spitting on the board and writing your Post-it notes, like, we're going to do this, this, and this. And we've got it figured out. You bring it to the operations guy who's all process driven. He's like, I can see A to B, but I don't know how we're going to get there. I haven't figured out and mapped that yet. And so they're frustrated.
And to your point, you need those guys, because if not, then I'm going to blow us up.
We're going.
One of the best parts about Hayden and I is we're both idea guys, but he's the guy's, okay, here's how we're going to put the pieces together to make it work. And you need those individuals that are like, okay, time out. What about this or this or this? I used to find that stifling. I was like, man, they just threw a wet blanket on what we're trying to do.
All these questions.
Wait, questions.
Yeah.
I mean, how, why? It doesn't matter.
We're going to do it.
We're doing it. But the interesting thing is like those details are very, very important, because at that point you're just an idea guy, and you're not
implementing
and having, action that actually will then truly show, growth. But now I understand is that individual is not throwing, water on our fire, our campfire that we're trying to build. They're not counterintuitive to our culture. What they're doing is they are trying to find a place in your world. So instead of me and Hayden trying to force them into
a square peg and a round
our
hole.
craziness, we now understand this is how they want to be related to. It goes back to, with kids. My 12-year-old, the idea of disappointing her, her mother and I, it just kills her. My 14-year-old is kind of like, cool. What other boundary can I push? Oh, you're not happy with me? That's cool. You'll get over that. What else can I push? What else can I push? So they're very different conversations, because they're very different personality types.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. I really enjoyed listening to you there, because it makes me think, especially as a young growing company, how important it is for the leadership to be aware enough to be like, okay, hey, I know that we work well together, but like, where are our gaps? And just spitballing, like, okay, like, what else do we need to take us to the next level? And how do we find the right people that can derive the right energy to get us there? And that's humbling a lot of times, because a lot of leaders just want to do it themselves or do it their way. and they've got blinders on to a certain extent, and so just having that awareness and then leveraging a tool like you were talking about, that actually gives you the data, and not just a feeling. You're actually trying to measure feelings of people, not just taking your own barometer of what you think the culture or the sentiment is. You're actually getting data from people.
You get two graphs when someone takes that. You get a graph of who they are as a person, and then you get a graph of what that person thinks and how they think they're supposed to act at work. So you can get two graphs that are the same, and that person is who they are and aligned. Who they think they need to be at work. And then you can get two graphs that are completely opposite, where this person may be, a go-getter, a people person, detail-oriented, but what they think they need to do in their job is not talk to anybody, don't have any details. And what you're looking for is both of those graphs to align, because that's going to charge people they're in the right seat. But when you see the graphs that are completely opposite,
they're not being true to themselves.
They're not being true to themselves in that work environment. And when we see that, that's where it's like, okay, well, what is this? Who is this person? What are they good at? We need to move them off this seat on the bus and put them on this seat on the bus, for it be beneficial to everybody.
I love that. Yeah. That's a great tool. The Culture Index. I've heard a lot of great things about
awesome.
It. It's, and I think what you said earlier about how you're sharing that information where it's not hoarded, like you are Kevin, the only ones that know what makes people tick. It's like, I want you to know about me. Yeah. I've seen companies even post their culture index outside their office. We're like, you're going to talk to me, make sure you're talking about these things, right? Because this is what I need to know to be successful in my role versus.
We printed out a copy, gave it to every single employee that took it. And we had a whole company-wide meeting on how to read it, what everything means, what the pros and the cons of each are. They picked on Kevin and I through the whole time. And, it was really eye-opening. And that way, the team is involved in it as well. And they know where they are and they know where other team members are. And it just goes back to that, culture, that communication, and just meshing that team together to be as best as possible.
When did you guys implement the Culture Index? Did you see a before and after kind of difference, or was it
about 2 months ago? Okay. I would say we brought it on.
Yeah, we had just hired our vice president of residential. 70% of our business is mostly it's commercial. That's really our wheelhouse. But we also have a very good residential presence, especially in North Texas. And we brought an individual to run that. He'd been very successful at a previous company, and I asked him. I said, "You obviously, you know what you're doing. You know your gig. What would you have done differently? What is one thing that you would implement here that you didn't do at the previous company?" And he said very easy. He's like, "I would start with a culture index. I would hire based off a culture index as opposed to kind of the way I'm feeling at that time." Because everyone can interview really well, especially sales reps. They interview very, very well. And so we said, okay, great. We asked him what he needed. This is what we did. I personally was kind of like, this probably a bunch of snake oil and crystals. That's fantastic. But we went to support it. And like I said, Hayden and I went, it was 2-day training, and I went away going, this is a really effective tool.
A game changer.
It really was a game changer. Yeah. There are positions to where it's like, you know what, it's not working out with this person. We probably just need to let them go. If you're in that situation where you just didn't feel good about it the next day, you're like, there's sometimes when someone has to transition out and you're like, should have done that about 2 months ago. And there's some situations where you're like, something just didn't feel really right. And what that is because you weren't 100% convinced that person needed to leave. They might have just been in the wrong seat. Yeah. They belonged on the bus. They were just in the wrong seat.
Love that.
And at the end of the day, that is not their fault. That is my fault. That is a leader's fault. Yeah. If someone is let go at Invictus, the first thing we do is we go to that person's manager, we go to the leader and go, we look at them first. It's the same thing when there's an issue. The first thing Hayden and I do is go, okay, what did we not do first? We look at ourselves first.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're going to find out, if this was implemented, if they were coached differently here, if they were positioned differently, then they would have succeeded. So this, using a tool like a culture index, it saves you from blooding your knuckles unnecessarily, because you guys know as well as anyone else, especially in the contracting world industry, it's a contact sport. It's a full contact sport.
Yeah.
And if you can avoid blooding your knuckles as much as you possibly can, and using this for that helps as well. And it's a part of the culture. They call it culture index for a reason. It really does permeate within the culture. And now people understand, okay, Kevin's not mad. He just runs hot all the time. That's just how he is.
All gas, no brakes.
That's just how he's wired. Hayden and I have worked together for so long that when we saw each other's index, we were like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, you got it.
Duh.
That's always a good feeling.
But to Hayden's point, we let everyone know how, this is how everyone.
So everyone's wired.
Yeah. And, again, it's not about
it's not good or bad.
Treat them how you want to be treated. Treat them how they need to be treated.
That's great. Yeah. I love that.
I haven't heard that before, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the accountability piece, which we started the conversation with. Accountability for the leadership to be aware if someone gets off the bus for good or wrong reasons. Oftentimes you can go back to that leader and like, what is something that I could have done here that could have helped the process, or what can we learn from this situation? Mm-hmm. And so there's some accountability on that end towards the leadership.
There absolutely is. It all starts with the leadership,
Well, I want to shift gears a little bit. I forget the story, and I'd like you guys to share it. So, the Invictus name, can you kind of give me like your thoughts and feelings on where the name came from and kind of the meaning behind it, and kind of
That's
share
a great
that?
Kevin story.
Yeah, it's a very cool story. I'll give the Cliff Notes version of it. So Invictus it's a Latin word for unconquerable. And it was also the Emerson poem. Before we started Invictus, Hayden and I had left an organization that we had grown, and for me it was a very painful exit, very stressful. I had not planned on leaving that company, but it was time, and so I was pretty beat up, and I remember going to go for a run, and I was going to hit the heavy bag just to kind of clear my head. And I had decided that I'm going to start again from scratch. I'd gotten offers from companies to come in with nice big fat salaries and packages, large companies. Most of us would know who they were, and I was flattered to even get the call. But I knew that's not how I'm wired. And so walking out, and Nikki, who's my wife, also our business partner, she's our CFO, one of the smartest people in the room, thank God. Even though she married me, but don't hold that against her. She said, "Hey, this isn't going to beat you." I thought, that's nice. That's nice to say that. Came back, and she shut the computer real quick. I said, "Oh, now's not the time to be on Amazon shopping right now." And she goes, "No, I just want to make sure it's available." I said, "What?" She's like, "The name of our new company, and it's called Invictus." I was like, "That's available?" She's like, "Invictus company is available." And I was telling her the story about how I kind of sat down with the leadership of the other company, and how they all kind of got up, and I was like, Hayden was like that guy that, like, you remember the movie Dead Poet Society?
Oh yeah.
You guys remember that, where they all stand up on the desk?
Yeah.
Don't catch my captain. Hayden and I kind of had that moment where he's like, "I'm going with you." I was like, "Okay, here we go." And so it's the name meant something. It was the fact that our backs were against the wall. I was probably about as beat up, and my confidence was shot. I was just on the ground bleeding pretty bad. And that word Invictus, it's unconquerable. And then the storyline of how it kind of came about. Even though we're one of the faster growing companies in North Texas, Hayden and I and most of the team, we still have that underdog mentality. We still have that scrappiness, and we do it by intention. We still keep that chip on the shoulder. We always want to be the underdog, because that's just kind of fuels the fire. We tell our team, is like, you don't have competition out there in terms of the other roofing companies. They're not your competition. There are other roofers that are also vying for the same business, but they're not your competition. Your competition is whatever you look in the mirror every single day. Mm-hmm. And once you get that mentality, it's just a different way. It's not arrogant, it's confidence. And that name Invictus just kind of permeates. It's very rare that you can find a company name that just really showcases and reflects of what the company's guts are about.
Yeah, love that.
It's part of your culture. Yeah. Invictus, incomparable. You said,
unconquerable.
So I love like these one word meaning it's like a mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inconquerable, or going back to winning.
Yeah.
You know, like I just love, like, you got to find what works for you, whether those are the core values or the mission statement or the vision, or maybe it's a mantra. But like something interesting that I read about was, you got all these titles of CEOs or COO, CFO. There's this one that's no one really knows about. It's called the CRO, the Chief
Revenue Officer.
No. That's a different one.
that
is one. But the Chief Reminding Officer.
The Chief Reminding Officer.
And this is kind of a play on culture, and it's more of a just the mentality from the leadership of like reminding people of what is your why, and that reminder could be different for everybody.
Sure,
it could be different for you than it is from Hayden. But what can you remind people to bring them back to their why, or to bring them back to what gives them energy? Like, that is a true kind of testament to the culture, because you're really creating an environment where people know their why and they're energized by it.
Yeah.
So whatever that is, and just saying the name Invictus, like, that's a reminder, like who we are and what we represent.
Yep.
So I love that.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to have that name.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where as soon as it came across, and I at one point was like trying to maybe thought about changing it, at the very beginning. And Hayden was like, "You crazy? No, don't do that." What? No. I was like, "Is it too complicated?" Hayden's like, "No, you're out of your mind. It's an awesome name. It's Invictus. We're doing Invictus."
It works.
And I'm so glad you taught me out of it. But you bring up something that's really interesting. It's everyone's why is a bit different, and they don't have to be grand. We have individuals, like, their why is, I want to go in, I want to make the company better at least 1% every single day that I'm here. And then Friday at 6:00, I want to go home. I want to drink some beer. And I want to watch some football.
Enjoy my life.
I'm going to mow my lawn. and that's their why. And that's okay. That's for them. It's, I want to go in, punch the clock, know that I made a difference.
Yep.
And then just enjoy my weekend.
Yep.
It's different. It's different, for everybody. One thing that I've found, and this harkens back to culture, is eventually achieved goals are just not enough. And I never really understood that until we started kind of seeing some wins on the board. And someone asked, like, was it ever enough? And I was like, well, no, it's never enough. But the bottom line is it has to come down to fulfillment, and making money and having success with an organization that doesn't really bring fulfillment. And so for us, it's the fulfillment is growing a company where other people can be truly be a part of growing, and then whatever journey they take after it. Let's be honest, not everyone is going to be an Invictus forever. Right. Eventually they're going to have another vocation or whatever, that they're just better when they took it. One of the best things is when an individual that it just wasn't necessary for him. He needed to go back home, and he wanted to chase his dreams in the music business. And I was like, man, I'm never gonna stop you from doing that.
Yeah.
Godspeed. It's tough out there, but we'll support it. He turned to me when he was leaving. This is Sean, and said, "Yep. I'm actually a better human being from being here. I didn't believe in myself." And this is him telling me this. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't have the confidence. I always thought of reasons why I shouldn't do something, or I always felt like I was in the wrong room. But working with you and Hayden for the last almost 3 years, he goes, I walk differently now. He goes, my parents have told me, you look different. You eat your food different. And he goes, I have like purpose now. For me, what the fulfillment is simply that.
Yeah.
It's on different levels. The fulfillment is you had a small part in changing this person's trajectory, an agent for good, for whatever that is. Yeah. Because we're always going to make money, and we're going to spend money, and then we'll make it, and then we're going to spend it. We're going to grow, we're going to contract, we're going to grow, and that's just part of the ebb and flow. That's the daily grind. But for me personally, the fulfillment was like just right here, having a conversation about this, that someone might out in the ether, hear this and take something of value and implement that, and they make a change, an agent for good. That's fulfillment. And that's one thing, as I realize, is success is a goal that needs to be achieved. I think everyone needs to feel successful.
Yeah.
Whatever that might, you need to have those wins.
Yeah.
But fulfillment is something that doesn't ever pour out. Success and goals pour in out of cups, but fulfillment sticks.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, we're wired, I believe, to like be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we all show up differently in that regard. I mean, some people feel more comfortable in that being part of a team or being more of a individual. But regardless, like I believe that God created humanity to come together for a purpose, for good, to grow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
To cultivate everything you were talking about.
Yeah.
So no, it makes perfect sense to me, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely. You're right.
So-
We are wired as a species to congregate.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we wrap things up, guys, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Really appreciate this time. But if there's anything you want to leave with the audience, specifically for leaders, as they're trying to grow their teams and cultivate a culture, what are some parting words that you would have for up and coming leaders?
Work on yourself.
Mm.
You know, read, gather knowledge, find a mentor. You can always learn every day. So, you know, work on yourself, and then what you've learned yourself, pour that into your team.
Love that.
Yeah,
it's great.
I think it's really good. I think that's the. I think that there's no other add on to that. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Is like we talked about before. Is you can't lead others if you don't lead yourself first. You have to be able to, you know, if you can't lead your home, if you can't lead the small things like that, but just make your bed in the morning. First off, you know, those atomic habits that keep, you know, work on yourself. I think that's the main thing, and is make that investment in yourself. Like Hayden talks about reading is feed your mind, feed your body, feed your spirit, and work yourself. And what happens is people will then, they'll start picking up on that. But you have to set the standard first. I agree with 100% with Hayden. I think the most important thing you can do in any type of leadership role is working yourself. I mean, the greats, you know, like Michael Jordan, Kobe, they were in the dark gym after the game, no cameras around, just working for 2 or 3 hours after a game or beforehand.
Yep.
And that shows up in the locker room, that shows up on the court. Like Hayden said, you start working yourself, you know, behind closed doors, that shows up at work.
Yeah.
And your
And
team,
it makes the team better.
It makes the team better, makes everyone around you better. And that's, someone asked me the other day, I was like, you know, why is it that you are, you have meetings with this individual, and you're constantly going around and you do networks with them. And I was like, it's very simple. This individual elevates everybody that's in a room with him. Everyone, if you're in a room long enough with him, everyone just gets a bit better.
Yeah.
And you want to be around those individuals.
Yeah.
Like Hayden said, is if your coach doesn't have a coach, find a different coach. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your leader is not getting mentored and fed from another source, then you've got to find a different leader.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think that the self-improvement piece is people are going to follow your path, and the leadership sets the tone for the environment. So if you're not looking to grow, then, you know, the organization can become stagnant or complacent.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's like our worst fears at being in the safety business is when companies or employees are starting to get complacent. And so that starts at the top with the leadership. So
that's good.
thank y'all so much for coming on. We
Thanks
really
for having
enjoyed
us.
this
Thanks
session.
for having
That
us.
was great. Thank you so much, Kevin and Hayden from Invictus, also known as Inconquerable.
Incomparable.
It's awesome. So thank y'all so much for joining the show. We look forward to seeing y'all out there.
Absolutely.
And God bless.
Thanks for having us.
Thank y'all.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.